the cops in the Breonna Taylor killing, the murder as I see it, they have now been charged. They have been charged. Let me first take you to the Attorney General of the United States of America. Here it is.
We allege that the defendants knew their actions in falsifying the affidavit could create a dangerous situation, and we allege these unlawful acts resulted in Ms. Taylor's death. The charges announced today also allege that the officers responsible for falsifying the affidavit that led to the search took steps to cover up their unlawful conduct after Ms. Taylor was killed. We allege that defendants Jaynes and Goodlett conspired to knowingly falsify an investigative document that was created after Ms. Taylor's death. We also allege that they conspired to mislead federal, state, and local authorities who were investigating the incident. For example, we allege that in May 2020, those two defendants met in a garage where they agreed to tell investigators a false story. This indictment separately alleges that defendant Meany lied to the FBI during its investigation of this matter.
All right, now we're getting somewhere. Now remember, the state attorney general decided not to file charges. I'm going to get into that in a moment. The federal government has picked this up. These cops have now been officially charged in the murder of Breonna Taylor. Let's put up the first cop here, okay? Now, remember Louisville, all right? So the FBI, they have arrested the former Louisville Metro Police officer, the detective who was fired for lying on the search warrant that led to the deadly 2020 raid at Breonna Taylor's apartment, as well as 3 others, including the only officer to face state charges in connection with Taylor's fatal shooting. Joshua Jaynes, okay, was taken into custody Thursday morning by the FBI, according to his attorney, Thomas Clay. Again, the charges for this detective relate to conspiracy to falsify records in relation to a federal investigation. So let me give you the background. Detective Jaynes was fired in January 2021 for inserting what then interim chief Gentry found to be an untruthful statement in his sworn affidavit for the warrant to search Taylor's apartment. Now, keep in mind, that's an arrestable offense. They decided to basically give this guy a slap on the wrist here and let him go. But that right there is an arrestable offense, okay? Offense, excuse me. In the affidavit, which he swore before a judge, this detective wrote that he verified through a US postal inspector that Taylor's ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover, a suspected drug trafficker, was having packages delivered to her apartment, all a lie. But the cop had actually spoken to another officer, Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, who had gotten information from another police department and not the postal inspector, okay? Postal inspector said there were no packages and police found no drugs whatsoever, no cash at all in the apartment after the fatal shooting. Let's go to the separate indictment. Here it is.
Another indictment filed today alleges that after Ms. Taylor was shot, another LMPD officer, defendant Brett Hankison, moved from the doorway to the side of her apartment and fired 10 more shots through a window and a sliding glass door, both of which were covered with blinds and curtains. Defendant Hankison has been charged with 2 civil rights offenses, alleging that he willfully used unconstitutionally excessive force while acting in his official capacity as an officer. Before I close, I want to thank Assistant Attorney General Clark, her team in the Civil Rights Division, and the case agents at the FBI for their tireless work on this case. We share, but we cannot fully imagine, the grief felt by Breonna Taylor's loved ones and all of those affected by the events of March 13th, 2020. Breonna Taylor should be alive today.
You're damn right she should. Let's put up the picture of the detective. He's referring to Brett Hankinson, okay? Earlier this year, a jury found that guy not guilty of what? Wanton endangerment. That's what he was charged with. Now, what is that charge? That was the charge created basically by the state attorney general, who's a black male and Republican. That charge was for the danger he put her neighbors in during the shooting. So literally, she gets killed, and this cop gets charged with putting her neighbors in danger. He was the only officer charged at the state level in connection with the case. And I have long said he was only charged because they were going to charge somebody with something minor. And that's what it was, okay? Clay also said he was told 2 other LMPD personnel involved in the Taylor case and search warrant process, Kelly Hannah Goodlett and Kyle Meany, are facing federal charges as well. It was not immediately clear if they had attorneys who could comment. I got more. Let's put up the picture of the former detective in question here. Now, let me just say this, because I know some people in positions of law enforcement with the federal government will end up seeing this. You see that guy? Former detective Miles Cosgrove. He was another officer fired in connection with the Taylor case. Right now, he does not appear to be facing any charges. However, he should. He should be charged as well. The FBI has been investigating Taylor's death since May of 2020, when it opened its color of law case that focuses on allegations of cops or other officials improperly using their authority, including excessive force, false arrest, or obstruction of justice. Now, you will get some pushback from individuals who say this is overreach by the federal government. No, the federal government, they have a statute under the color of law where this is appropriate when people in official capacity decide to abuse their authority and violate the rights of citizens. They should have been using this statute. Rather than asking Congress to give them more power to include a regular murder federal statute, let's utilize the statutes that you currently have. And that's exactly what's happening now. Now, understand, initially, everyone who looked at this said no crimes took place once you got it outside of that corrupt ass state and those biased conservative leaders. All of a sudden, you have a real indictment. All right, Ms. Khan, thoughts here.
Yeah, it's crazy how long it took to get to this point. It's crazy how many resources had to be spent to get to this point. And yes, as to your point, it's crazy that the feds had to get involved in what really could have been or should have been an open and shut case. It was so obvious what happened in that situation. And still, it's years later and we're still talking about it. And it's crazy how many people had to suffer and cry and march and just assert their humanity to get to this point. And there are so many similar stories just like this one, and we simply don't have the time or the resources or the emotional capacity to go through this process every time a similar situation presents itself. But unfortunately, that's kind of part of the tactic. You exhaust people, you bombard them with things that they'd rather not think about or things that they would rather not feel, until they just give up and completely shut down. They breed hopelessness in people because hopeful people fight for what they believe. So we, as an audience, as a people, we can't lose that vigor.
That's right. They won't stop, we won't stop.